Hi, this is Steve Rigolosi, and tonight on Forgotten Mysteries, I have for you The Misty Curtain by Lucy Corse. And as you can see at the bottom, sorry for the glare, it is a Harper novel of suspense. This is an imprint that I really like, and excuse me, when I'm prowling used bookstores, if I see a Harper novel of suspense by a writer I haven't heard of, and it's a reasonable price, I will usually invest in it because it is an imprint that I really like and trust and have found a lot of great writers through. They're not all great, but there's many good ones. And the Harper novels of suspense don't follow a formula, right? They come in all sizes, all different types of plots, all kinds of different characters. The editor, Joan Kahn, seemed to really like variety, and that reflects my own taste in books. I like variety. I can't keep reading the same type of book over and over again. So Lucy Corse has a bit of an interesting history. She was born in Russia, and her family fled the Russian Revolution, and they landed in the United States in 1921. Her parents were both professional orchestral musicians, and she herself was part of that artistic community and wrote a couple of mysteries starring a ballerina as the key protagonist, and also, like a lot of other writers from this era, wrote in a bunch of different genres. She wrote mysteries, she wrote nonfiction, she wrote science fiction. She was allowed to kind of hop through the genres, which publishers back then were a little bit more tolerant of. Nowadays, if you're a mystery writer and you say you want to write science fiction, everybody looks at you like you flipped your lid. I mean, your agent will drop you, your publisher will stop taking your calls. They want to put you in a box where you'll be chained forever, turning out the same exact book that they can rely on in terms of their formula. Can you say James Patterson? But there was more latitude for writers to kind of be creative back then. Nowadays, if you want to jump genres, I think you really have to do it under a pseudonym. But it's a small industry and word gets out, so I don't even think much of that happens. So let me tell you a little bit about the plot of this book. And I'm going to tell you some of its really good points. And I'm also going to tell you about a few of its really bad points that I think make it not at all a book for modern readers. So first, let me tell you about the plot, which is a good one. It's the type of plot that I like, and that's a missing person plot. It starts out with our hero, George Cruz, who is a playwright and a gentleman and a nice person. He's flying from LA to New York because one of his plays is going to be produced. And sitting next to him on the plane is this young woman who bears a resemblance to this glamorous Hollywood star who had caused George to be utterly starstruck when he was a young junior screenwriter in Hollywood. Her name was Anna Morrow. And she's described as this luminous blonde beauty. I guess the closest comparison I can make is probably Grace Kelly, that kind of classy, beautiful, elegant look. And interestingly, like Grace Kelly, the actress here, Anna Morrow, is married to a prince. She's married to Kasim. He is a prince of Barapur in India. So Princess Grace Kelly had married the Prince of Monaco about 10 years before this book was written. So I definitely saw the influence of that in here. Although Anna Morrow's personality traits are not at all those of what we associate with Grace Kelly. I'm just talking about looks. So Anna, as a young woman in Hollywood, she married this man who was a non-Hollywood type. He was a professor, and they had a daughter. But Anna, being, utterly selfish woman, basically had a kid and then abandoned her family because she wanted bigger and better things for herself. She wanted, an enormous screen career, and she just, she wanted to be Marilyn Monroe, and really was sort of single-minded in her pursuit of that goal. And, she had to abandon her husband and her kid to do it. So be it. So, excuse me. So, her daughter's name is Elizabeth Simmons. And George says to her, not to bother you, miss, but I have to ask you, are you in any relation to Anna Morrow? Because you really resemble her. And the young woman says, as a matter of fact, I am. I'm her daughter, and I am on my way to New York to meet her. And the kid is so excited because she has not seen her mother for 10 years or more, and only occasionally gets, a little gift or a little scribbled note in the mail saying, oh, hello, darling, thinking of you. But she's basically been abandoned by her mother. And this idea of reconciling with her mother is, highly appealing to her. She grew up without a mother, and she wants one, and she's so overjoyed that her mother has reached out. But when the plane lands, the mother is not there waiting for Elizabeth. She doesn't show up. So George, being a kind man, he takes her to the hotel, one of these old world New York hotels, the Winchester, where her mother is staying with her husband, the prince, and she drops her off and leaves her basically in the care of Miss Bodkin, who is Anna's private secretary, and who is a lot like Mrs. Danvers from Rebecca. Not a pleasant, touchy-feely kind of woman. She's very severe, doesn't seem to have a human feeling in her body except anger when she's crossed, and has zero sympathy for Elizabeth, and says to her, I don't know what you're talking about. Your mother did not call you. Your mother did not invite you here. I am her personal secretary. I basically run her life for her, and I would know if you were due here, and you're not, so go away. But turns out the prince shows up, and he feels sorry for the kid, and he says, no, you stay here till we find your mother. We don't know where she is right now because she has this history of kind of disappearing when she wants to. When she takes a lover, or if she feels like a tropical vacation, she will go behind everybody's back and make reservations under an assumed name and rent places. And, when she's done living that alternate life, she comes back. But, she's a selfish woman, and, by no means, a good mother or a nice person. So the book really becomes about Elizabeth's quest to find her mother, because the mother is missing and no one knows where she is. A couple chapters later, her mother's body is found dead. But Elizabeth, being sort of an innocent or a naif, says, I don't believe that was my mother. I know in my heart my mother is really alive. And I'm going to do what it takes to find her. So we're set up for a good plot, right? Where is Anna? Is she hiding? Has she been kidnapped? Is she gone of her own volition? Has someone really killed her? We don't know, because we come to find out she has a problem with drugs, and she's just not a reliable person in any way, shape, or form. And aiding her in this is George, the playwright she met on the plane, along with his friend Artie, who is a psychiatrist to the stars. His clientele is composed completely of people from the Broadway world, actors, directors, all those people with their, grandiose delusions of grandeur and their egos and their their sensitivities and their insecurities. And so there's a lot of kind of fun, like Broadway type gossip here with Broadway star types who are very, kiss kiss, calling everybody darling or honey. And you can't believe a word from them. Insincerity oozes from their every pore, and looks mean everything. And the other playwrights are kind of jerks. They all love their own words, and are just as self-centered as any of the actors or actresses. So you get to spend some time in that world, and that's kind of fun. So that's the general plot. Now, let me tell you why this book has some strong things to recommend it. The first is that the writing is really excellent. The style reminds me a bit of Andrew Garve, he's one of my mystery heroes. Clean, crisp writing, not a word out of place, wonderful dialogue for the most part, with one exception, which I'll tell you about in a little bit. Excellent plotting, a very clear through line, with good detours along the way, to keep the reader interested and unbalanced. And really, so a pleasure to read, and a very good mystery novel, a very good plot, and a very good story that comes to a terrific ending. The ending of this book is not what you would expect. It wasn't what I expected. I think it was kind of brave, and I just really like the way the author handled it. Although she does use one kind of trick that I could kind of go either way on. But I'm going to give her a pass on it, because there's enough explanation around this one little oddity that I felt like, okay, I can buy it if I had to. So you're thinking, likable protagonist in George Cruz, terrific writing, interesting setting in New York City and the theater, great plot. Where is the missing mother? And did she really call her daughter to attempt a reconciliation, or is this some hoax or some plot against Elizabeth? And how's it all going to turn out? Will Elizabeth find her mother? But, and this is a big but, there's an aspect of this book that I think will drive modern readers, especially women, berserk. And that is that Elizabeth, and I'm just going to come right out and say this, she is a whiny, weepy, complaining mess. All she does is whine, and her voice quivers because she's so upset at what's going on around her, and she just can't quite deal with all of it. And the author really makes a serious mistake in giving her a stammer. So she's always talking like this in the dialogue. Now, this is by no means meant to be offensive to anybody who has a speech impediment, because I had one myself when I was a kid. I had a lazy S. Imagine reading stammering dialogue for 200 plus pages. It is super annoying. I can see, in the hands of a really good writer, you could use stammering very well to convey a person's nervousness, insecurity, lack of experience when dealing with much more worldly people. Like, you could see the voice quivering a little bit in those cases. But not on every bloody page of the book. In fact, there were one or two times where Elizabeth managed to speak a couple of paragraphs without stammering. And I thought, yay! Thank the Lord above. She's finally, as a result of her experience, she's growing out of this childish way of speaking and acting to become an adult. And then she's right back to weeping and accusing people like a like a hormone-riddled teenager of things they didn't do. And she's just, you can't stand her. You really can't, even though you want to sympathize with her plight. And you feel for her because she's been abandoned by her mother. Her father has not done a good job of being a mother substitute and wasn't even a particularly good father. And she's looking for someone to love and to bond with. This should be the kind of person that your heart goes out to and you want to see only the best things happen to. That's not going to happen when you read about Elizabeth here, because her self-presentation is so crazy-making that you think to yourself, I don't know how much more I can put up with this. Like, there were several times in this book where I thought, I got to do something. I got to take a tranquilizer. I got to do something to make me get through her dialogue. There would be chapters or parts of the book where the camera shifted to other characters, and that was where Lucy Corrs was really at her best. But then, whenever Elizabeth showed up on the scene, I thought, oh no, she's back. How do we get her off the page as quickly as possible? And there were large ramifications to this, in that the way she behaves makes all the men around her treat her like a child. Someone who has to be protected, someone who can't be trusted or believed, someone who is emotionally fragile and needs to be taken care of, someone who's not to be taken seriously because she's one big bundle of emotions and one big volcano of tears. And so you really see, it's almost like a throwback to a much earlier period where women had no agency and were only and only managed to get anything done with the help of the men surrounding them. And that's not really fair to the character of Elizabeth here, because she's no dummy. She makes very good deductions. She makes connections between things that have happened and things that have been said that help carry the plot forward. And she's right. So she's far from dumb, but her self-presentation is so whiny and pathetic that I just think that modern readers are going to say, next, I need Mrs. Peel. I need Xena Warrior Princess. I need Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like somebody who's just going to kick ass and get on with it instead of crying her way throughout the book. And I think Lucy Corrs could have done she could have had Elizabeth start out very unsure of herself, and then through the arc of character building through the book, she could have made her become stronger and more sure of herself as she proceeds through the book. But no, she's a mess. She's a mess from page 1 through page 220. And, do with that information what you will. But like I said, I just don't think many people are going to like this book. I also have to say the title stinks. The Misty Curtain. Okay. As explained in the book, the Misty Curtain refers to a sort of willingness to not see the truth, that you're willing to deceive yourself or be deceived. You've got this misty curtain hanging in front of your eyes that sort of distorts the images and doesn't allow you to see clearly, but only because you really allow that curtain to be there because of your own emotional issues, your own immaturity. Okay, interesting metaphor, terrible title for a book. I mean, it makes it sound like a romance or even softcore porn, right? The Misty Curtain. That doesn't convey suspense. That doesn't convey mystery. That doesn't convey a story that grabs me by the throat and makes me want to, spend all my time reading it. No, it's just kind of this diaphanous kind of thing floating around, and, we hope it comes in for a landing at some point. The book also reminded me a lot of a book by Nedra Tyer called Journey to Nowhere. This is it right here. Nedra Tyer is a very underread and underappreciated writer. She wasn't perfect, but she did consistently interesting things. And I recommend Journey to Nowhere, as well as what I think is her best book called Death of an Intruder. It's sort of a similar plot where a person gets on a plane for a destination not quite knowing what to expect when she gets there. So, right, interesting, builds up a lot of interest in the reader. But Nedra Tyer does a fabulous job with it. And Lucy Corrs, while she gets the plot right, she does not get the main character right. And so it's really kind of a shame to think that an author has built this edifice of a good plot, good writing, a lot of good characters, a lot of good dialogue, a satisfying ending, but the protagonist will annoy the living hell out of you. And when you have that kind of narrator, everything else kind of falls apart. The whole edifice falls apart because your plot and your characters have to intersect to make a good book. And if you've got an unsympathetic lead who really should be sympathetic but isn't because of her own behavior, you've just got something that I think leads to not a great experience for the reader. So, my friends, I'm sorry that I could not be more enthusiastic about this book. But, it kind of reminded me, in so many ways of what's really important in a mystery novel or fiction in general, and how you really have to be careful in terms of your protagonists. They can be flawed and should be, right? I mean, nobody wants, Little Miss Muffet or Little Goody Two Shoes or whatever. That's boring. But the readers have to want to spend time in their company. So it's a real problem when you read a book and every time Elizabeth shows up on the page, you think, just give me a tranquilizer so I can get through this chapter until I don't have to see her again for 15 pages. So, not the best reading experience. Okay, I don't want to go on too long. I've already done that already. But thank you for bearing with me during my diatribe, my very honest diatribe. And I will be back next time with another book for you. Hopefully one that I can recommend more highly than I recommend this one. Okay, thank you and good night.